My name is Catherine Leland, and I never expected a routine dental visit to change my life forever. I grew up in a small farming town in Nebraska, where life was simple but often unforgiving. My childhood was far from idyllic. Poverty and emotional neglect were constants in my world. I was an only child, left to fend for myself in a home where warmth and security were scarce. I learned early on that survival meant self-reliance. As soon as I could, I escaped that world. I moved to Denver, Colorado, determined to create a better life for myself. I climbed the corporate ladder with relentless ambition, believing that financial stability would be my key to happiness. I worked tirelessly, taking pride in the success I had built. I became a senior executive at a marketing firm, balancing a demanding career with raising two children. I was the definition of a workaholic, filling every moment with productivity. I coached soccer, attended PTA meetings, and made sure my kids had everything I never did. So, life was busy but predictable until that December afternoon in 2017. I had put off a major dental procedure for too long, brushing aside the discomfort as just another inconvenience in my packed schedule. Finally, I set aside time for it. The procedure would be long and complex, so the dentist suggested using a sedative gas to help me relax. As I settled into the chair, I felt the mask cover my face. I focused on my breathing as the room around me began to blur. Then something strange happened. With each breath, I felt myself floating, then falling back into my body, over and over again. And then, with one final breath, I left my body entirely. Nay, at first, I wasn't entirely sure what was happening. I could still hear the faint hum of the dental equipment, the murmur of the dentist preparing his instruments. But my body felt distant, like a suit of clothing I had just stepped out of. With each breath, I felt myself rising higher, then sinking back, like a wave rolling in and out. But then, on one final exhale, I lifted completely away. I was no longer tethered to my body. Instead, I was floating several feet above it, gazing down at myself. The sight should have terrified me. My body lay motionless in the chair, the dentist still turned away, unaware of what was happening. Yet I felt no fear, no panic, only a profound sense of peace. It was as if I had slipped out of something heavy, something that had been weighing me down all my life, and now I was light, free, untethered. A strange realization dawned on me. That body down there, it's mine, but it's not me. I had spent my entire life identifying with my physical form. I had fought for success, security, and stability. But now, none of it mattered. My body, my job, my responsibilities, they were not who I really was. As I hovered above the room, another shift occurred. The ceiling tiles grew impossibly detailed, each crack and speck of dust suddenly fascinating, like an intricate design I had never noticed before. Then, in an instant, my perspective flipped. I was no longer looking down, but staring directly into the ceiling, inches from its surface. And then, I was gone. Nada. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer in the dentist's office. Done. I found myself in darkness, but it wasn't the kind that felt empty or cold. It was soft, warm, comforting, like being wrapped in a blanket. There was no fear, no loneliness. Instead, there was an overwhelming sense of belonging, of completeness. I realized I wasn't alone. Though I couldn't see anyone, I could feel a presence, or perhaps many presences, surrounding me. It wasn't like being in a crowd, but rather being part of something much greater than myself. Then I felt it. Love. Not the kind of love I had known in my human life, which always seemed to come with conditions, expectations, or struggles. This was pure, infinite, unconditional love. It wasn't just something I was experiencing. It was something I was part of. There were no words, but I understood everything. I was home. I had no awareness of time, no memories of the life I had left behind. There was only this deep knowing. I had always been part of this, and I always would be. I could feel myself expanding, merging into something vast and endless, yet somehow I was still me. It was as if I was both an individual and everything at once. Curiosity stirred within me. With just a thought, I had access to infinite knowledge. I understood things about life, existence, and the universe in ways that words could never express. Every question I had ever pondered no longer needed an answer, because I knew the answer before the question could even form. I wanted to keep expanding, to keep merging into this vastness. There was nothing pulling me back, no regrets, no unfinished business. I had no reason to return. But then, something shifted. I felt a force pulling at me, like an invisible thread connecting me to something I had forgotten. A memory surfaced, a faint whisper of my children's laughter, their faces flickering in my mind like distant candlelight. And then I was yanked back. The warmth, the love, the oneness, it all began to slip away like sand through my fingers. I tried to hold on, I tried to stay, but the force pulling me was stronger. In a split second, the darkness was gone. The oneness faded. I opened my eyes, back in my body, back in the dental chair, back to my old life. I gasped as my eyes flew open. The bright artificial light above me was harsh, almost blinding after the infinite warmth I had just experienced. I felt disoriented, heavy, and disconnected from my body, like I had been forced back into something too small, too restrictive. The dentist was hovering over me, his eyes filled with concern. "Catherine, can you hear me?" I blinked, trying to focus. My heart pounded in my chest, but not from fear, from loss. It was like waking up from the most beautiful dream imaginable, only to realize that it was gone forever. "Yeah," I croaked, though the word felt foreign on my tongue. "I'm here." But that wasn't entirely true. A part of me was still there, in that place of infinite love and knowing, and no matter how much time passed, I knew I would never truly leave it behind. The aftermath. For the first few hours, I chalked it up to the anesthesia, the medication, a hallucination. Maybe I had dreamed the whole thing. That explanation would have been easier to accept, more logical, more aligned with the world I knew. But the feeling didn't fade. I was different. Everything around me seemed dull, muted, like I was watching life through a foggy window. The things I had once cared about, the deadlines, the meetings, the endless pursuit of success, felt meaningless. I tried to resume my normal routine, but something inside me had shifted so profoundly that I couldn't force myself to care about the same things anymore. The first real breakdown happened a few days later, when I was standing in the kitchen, watching my kids argue over something trivial: who got the last slice of pizza, or whose turn it was to load the dishwasher. I should have intervened, but instead, tears welled up in my eyes. Not because I was sad, but because I was overwhelmed by love. Looking at them, I realized how much time I had spent rushing through life, always planning for the next thing, never fully present, and now every second felt sacred. I wanted to reach out and hold on to this moment forever, because for the first time in my life, I truly understood what mattered. It wasn't my job. It wasn't my title. It wasn't the house, the car, the endless striving. It was love. A life I no longer fit into. In the following weeks, I struggled to articulate what had happened. Who would believe me if I told someone I had died, if only for a moment, and experienced something beyond this world? Would they think I was crazy? But I couldn't ignore the way it had changed me. I no longer felt driven by ambition. The corporate world, which had once given me a sense of purpose, now felt empty. I sat in meetings, pretending to care, while inside my soul was aching for something more. I tried to explain it to my best friend over coffee one afternoon. I don't know how to describe it, I said, stirring my drink absent-mindedly. It's like I touched something so vast, so loving, that nothing in this world feels real anymore. She frowned. Like an out-of-body experience? I hesitated, then nodded. Something like that. But more. It wasn't just leaving my body. It was becoming something greater. Feeling this oneness with everything. She studied me, her expression cautious. Maybe it was just the anesthesia? I expected that response. It was easier to believe it was just a trick of the brain than to accept that something beyond comprehension had happened. But I knew the truth. Nothing in my life had prepared me for what I had experienced, and nothing could ever take that knowledge away from me. Searching for answers. Desperate for some kind of explanation, I turned to the only place I could think of, the internet. That's when I discovered near-death experiences, NDEs. As I read story after story, I felt a jolt of recognition. So many people described the same things I had. The feeling of leaving their body, the sense of oneness and unconditional love, the reluctance to return, the overwhelming shift in perspective after coming back. I wasn't alone. It wasn't a hallucination. It was real. The more I read, the more I realized that this experience had happened to countless others across cultures, backgrounds, and beliefs, and no matter how different the details were, the core of the experience was always the same. We are more than just our physical bodies. We are connected to something far greater. And death is not the end. It's simply a return to what we've always been. A new path. I knew then that I couldn't go back to my old life. I didn't belong there anymore. So, after months of soul searching, I made the hardest decision of my life. I quit my job. I had no concrete plan, no safety net, but I knew I needed to spend my life doing something that mattered, something that aligned with the truth I had touched. I opened a wellness studio, a space where people could come to meditate, reconnect with themselves, and explore their own spirituality. I started speaking with others who had experienced NDEs, and the more stories I heard, the more I understood. We don't have to die to connect with that love, that oneness, that peace, that infinite connection. It's always here. We just have to slow down, open our hearts, and remember. Looking back, it's been years since that moment in the dentist's chair, and while I still long for that place beyond, I no longer see this life as something to endure. I see it as a gift, because now I know we are here to experience. We are here to love. And when our time comes to leave this world, we are simply going home. Years have passed since that moment in the dentist's chair, yet not a day goes by that I don't think about what I experienced. The longing to return to that place, the place of pure love, oneness, and peace, never truly fades. But over time, I've learned something just as important. I don't have to wait until death to connect with it. At first, adjusting to life after my near-death experience felt impossible. I struggled to stay engaged in everyday conversations, to focus on things that once seemed important. Small talk, work deadlines, even planning for the future, all of it felt trivial in comparison to what I had touched. Yee, but I also realized something else. I was still here for a reason. Instead of resisting life, I had to embrace it. I had to find ways to bring that love, that peace, that deep connection into this world. rather than just longing for the next. Finding peace in the present. One of the biggest changes I made was developing a regular meditation practice. In those quiet moments of stillness, I could sometimes feel the edges of that infinite love again, like an echo of something greater. It wasn't the same as being there, but it was a reminder that it never truly left me. I also began to slow down. I had spent so many years rushing through life, chasing achievement after achievement. But now I savor the little moments, the warmth of sunlight on my skin, the laughter of my children, the quiet joy of simply existing. I used to believe that success meant climbing higher, earning more, achieving more. Now I know that true success is learning how to love, how to be present, and how to bring peace into the world around me. A message for others. If my experience taught me anything, it's this: we don't need to fear death. What's waiting for us is beyond anything we can imagine. More beautiful, more peaceful, more loving than anything on earth. But more importantly, we don't have to wait until we die to feel it. That love, that peace, it's here, now, in every moment. We just have to slow down, open our hearts, and remember. In the years since my near-death experience, I've learned that the hardest part isn't leaving that world of infinite love. It's learning how to live in this one after touching it. Yea, at first, I felt lost. How could I go back to a normal life knowing what I now knew? The mundane responsibilities, paying bills, grocery shopping, answering emails, seemed insignificant. I struggled to engage in conversations where people stressed over things that, in the grand scheme of eternity, felt so small. But then I realized something. I was still here for a reason. If I had been meant to stay on the other side, I would have. Instead, I had been sent back. Not as a punishment, not as a mistake, but with purpose. I had spent my entire life chasing something: success, stability, validation. But in that brief moment of leaving my body, I had understood something deeper. We already have everything we need within us: love, peace, connection. The purpose of life isn't about how much we accomplish, how much money we make, or how high we climb. It's about experiencing, feeling, loving. And so, instead of longing for the afterlife, I made a choice. I would bring that love into this life. Sharing the experience. One of the biggest shifts after my NDE was my need to talk about it. At first, I was hesitant. What if people didn't believe me? What if they thought I had imagined it? But as I began sharing, I found that my words resonated with others, especially those who had lost loved ones or feared death. People would listen with wide eyes, sometimes with tears, and say, "I needed to hear this." That's when I understood my experience wasn't just for me, it was for others too. So I continued speaking. I connected with near-death experience groups, read books on the subject, and met others who had been through something similar. Despite our different backgrounds, the core of our experiences was the same. Death is not the end. We are more than our physical bodies. We are loved beyond measure. And that message, it was one I knew I had to keep sharing. Living with love and intention. I no longer live my life in the same way. I don't rush through my days. I don't chase things that don't fulfill me. Instead, I try to live with love and intention, to be present in each moment, to cherish the people around me, to bring kindness into every interaction. I don't fear death anymore. When my time comes, I know I will be returning home. But until then, I will live fully. Because life isn't just something to endure until we reach the other side. It's a gift, meant to be experienced with joy, love, and gratitude. And that is what I now strive to do every single day. For a long time after my near-death experience, I felt like I was living between two worlds. One part of me was still deeply connected to that infinite love and peace, while the other was struggling to exist in the physical world. How could I possibly return to a normal life when I had touched something so vast, so profound? At first, I resisted. I didn't want to engage in the small worries of daily life. Traffic, work stress, household chores. None of it felt important anymore. I had seen beyond this world, and I knew how temporary everything was. But then slowly I realized something. This world is important too. Yes, what I experienced on the other side was real. Yes, there is something beyond this life. But that didn't mean I was supposed to dismiss my earthly experience. If anything, it meant I was meant to live it more fully, not as an obligation, but as an opportunity. Life is a gift, and I have been given a second chance to truly appreciate it. The shift in perspective. Before my NDE, I lived in a constant state of what's next. I was always working toward the next goal, the next promotion, the next milestone. My days were filled with meetings, emails, and responsibilities that never seemed to end. I was always planning for the future, never truly present in the moment. But after my experience, I began to slow down. Instead of rushing through my mornings, I started waking up early just to sit in silence, watching the sunrise. Instead of checking my phone during meals, I started truly listening to my children when they spoke. Instead of seeing work as a never-ending obligation, I started asking myself, how can I serve? How can I bring love into what I do? Everything became more meaningful. Every interaction, every small moment, every breath. I used to believe that purpose came from achievement. Now, I understand that our true purpose is simply to love. Lessons from the other side. The knowledge I brought back from my NDE wasn't something I could easily put into words. It wasn't just a set of facts or beliefs. It was a deep, unshakable knowing that changed the way I saw everything. Here are some of the most important lessons I learned. We are not just our bodies. Who we really are goes beyond the physical. Our bodies are temporary, but our souls are eternal. We are all connected. There is no separation between us. The love I felt in that place wasn't just for me. It exists for everyone all the time. Fear is an illusion. Fear only exists in this physical reality. On the other side, there is only love. And once we realize that, we can live more freely without letting fear control us. Life is meant to be lived fully. We are here to experience, to love, to grow, not just to survive. Every moment is precious. Death is not the end. What waits for us is beyond anything we can imagine. More beautiful, more peaceful, and more loving than we could ever put into words. Applying these lessons to life. Knowing these truths is one thing. Living by them is another. Since my NDE, I have made conscious choices to live differently. I prioritize love over achievement. I choose kindness over competition. I focus on presence instead of productivity. But I'm still human. There are days when I get frustrated, when I forget, when I fall back into old patterns. The difference now is that I recognize it sooner, and I can bring myself back to center. One of the biggest things that has helped me is meditation. Before my NDE, I never took time to just be still. Now, it's a daily practice. It helps me reconnect, not just with myself, but with that infinite love I felt on the other side. Well, and when I meditate, even for just a few minutes, I remember that love is still here, that peace is still within me. It never left. Sharing the gift. I used to think that spiritual wisdom was something reserved for monks, saints, or people who spent their lives in deep study. But my experience taught me that it's available to all of us. You don't have to have a near-death experience to feel it. You don't have to meditate for hours a day to access it. You don't have to abandon your life to be spiritual. All you have to do is slow down, be present, open your heart. I believe that every single one of us has the ability to connect with that love, that peace, that sense of oneness, right here, right now. We don't have to wait until death to find it. It's already within us. And if my experience has taught me anything, it's that we are never truly alone. We are loved. We are guided. And when our time here is done, we will return home to that love once again. Even now, years after my near-death experience, I sometimes wake up in the morning with a deep sense of longing. It's not sadness, not regret, just a quiet yearning for that place of infinite love and peace that I once touched. But instead of letting that longing pull me away from life, I use it as a reminder. I am here, and this moment matters. A different kind of success. Before my NDE, I defined success by external achievements. A higher salary, a bigger house, more recognition. I worked endlessly, always chasing the next milestone, believing that once I reached a certain level, I would finally feel fulfilled. But the truth is, fulfillment isn't something we find. It's something we bring into our lives through the way we live. Now, I measure success differently. Did I show kindness today? Did I appreciate the people around me? Did I take a moment to just be present? By these standards, anyone can be successful, because true success isn't about what we accomplish, but about how much love we bring into the world. Facing life's challenges with a new perspective. Some people assume that after an experience like mine, life becomes easy, but that's not true. I still have struggles. I still face moments of doubt, frustration, and pain. But the difference now is that I no longer feel alone in those struggles. I know that no matter what happens, I am supported. That love I felt on the other side, it's still here guiding me. And when challenges arise, I remind myself, this moment is temporary. Love is eternal. Final reflections. If there's one thing I want people to take away from my story, it's this. You don't have to wait until death to feel peace. You don't have to leave this world to find love. It's already here. It always has been. Slow down. Be present. Cherish this life. Not because it's all we have, but because it's a gift we get to experience before we go home. For a long time after my near-death experience, I felt like I was waiting for life to make sense again, waiting to feel like I belonged here, waiting for the day I would return to that infinite love I had touched. Gee. But over time, I realized that life isn't something to endure until we reach the other side. It's something to embrace, to experience fully, to live with intention. I wasn't sent back to merely exist. I was sent back to love, to grow, to share, and to live deeply. The power of presence. One of the biggest lessons I learned from my NDE is that presence is everything. For years, I lived my life on autopilot, always rushing, always planning, always thinking about what was next. But now, I understand that the only moment that truly matters is the one we're in right now. I find joy in the little things. The sound of laughter at the dinner table. The feeling of the sun on my skin. The quiet moments of stillness before the day begins. These moments may seem small, but they are sacred. They are life itself. Sharing the light with others. I don't claim to have all the answers. I'm still learning, still growing, still finding my way. But if my experience has taught me anything, it's that we are all connected, and the love I felt on the other side is meant to be shared. That's why I speak openly about my NDE, not to convince anyone, but to offer hope, to remind people that they are loved, they are not alone, and they are here for a reason. A final thought. When my time comes to leave this world again, I know I will go with peace. I will return to that love, that oneness, that beautiful home beyond this life. But until then, I will live fully, deeply, and with gratitude. Because this life, with all its joys and sorrows, all its beauty and struggle, is a gift. And I intend to cherish every moment of it. Looking back, I realized that my near-death experience wasn't just about what happened when I left my body, it was about what I brought back with me. I returned with a deep knowing that love is the foundation of everything, that we are not our fears, our failures, or our struggles. We are something far greater, something eternal. I used to be afraid of so many things: losing control, making mistakes, not being enough. But now, I understand that there is nothing to fear. Life isn't a test. There is no way to fail. Every experience, good or bad, is part of the journey. We are here to learn, to love, to grow, and to remember who we truly are. And when our time comes to leave this world, we will realize that we were never really separate. We were always part of something greater. So, until that day comes, my promise to myself is simple. I will live with love. I will choose kindness. I will be present. Because life is not something to endure, it is something to cherish. And love is not something we find, it is something we are.